Welcome to the channel CoinWorth Lab, and if you've ever reached into your pocket, pulled out a quarter, and thought this is just change, then what I'm about to tell you is going to completely change how you look at every single coin you touch from this moment forward, because we're talking about Washington quarters, the ones you see every single day, the ones you spend on parking meters and vending machines without a second thought, and some of them, the ones that look completely ordinary, are worth more than luxury cars, more than most people's annual salaries, and in one absolutely jaw-dropping case, more than a house in Beverly Hills. So stay with me, because the 1994 Washington quarter we're starting with today has a story that will make your hands shake the next time you sort through your change, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at pocket change the same way again. Now here's what makes the 1994 Washington quarter so fascinating. On the surface, it looks like every other quarter minted in Denver that year, the same familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse, the same eagle on the reverse, the same clad composition of copper and nickel that makes up virtually every quarter struck after 1965, but certain specimens of this coin have sold for as much as $115 million. And the reason why comes down to a combination of error, characteristics, grading perfection, and collector demand so fierce that auction rooms have gone absolutely silent when these coins come up for bidding. Let's start with the historical context, because 1994 was an interesting year at the Denver Mint. Production was running at a massive scale, with hundreds of millions of quarters rolling off the presses, and when you produce that many coins at that kind of speed, the chances of something extraordinary slipping through quality control increase dramatically, and that's exactly what happened with the specific error varieties that make the 1994 D so remarkable to collectors today. The Denver Mint, identifiable by that small D mint mark just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse, was under tremendous pressure to meet circulation demand in 1994, and it's precisely during those high-volume production runs that the most valuable errors tend to emerge: double dies, off-center strikes, die cap errors, and dramatic planchet mistakes that transform an ordinary quarter into something the numismatic world fights over at auction. Now I want you to think about something for just a moment. Can you imagine reaching into a jar of old coins on your grandmother's shelf, pulling out what looks like a perfectly normal 1994 D quarter, and then discovering it's worth more than her entire house? That scenario has actually played out for real collectors, and it's not a fantasy, it's documented numismatic history, and it could absolutely happen to you. The specific variety that commands the most extraordinary premiums on the 1994 D is the double die obverse error, where Washington's portrait, the lettering, and the date show unmistakable doubling visible even to the naked eye. You'll see it most clearly in the word Liberty on the obverse, where the letters appear to have a shadow or ghost image slightly offset from the primary impression, and in Washington's eye, where the doubling creates a distinctive thick appearance that experienced collectors can spot from across a table. But here's what makes this even more valuable: it's not just the error itself, it's the grade, because a 1994 D double die quarter in circulated condition might bring a few $100s, which is already remarkable for a coin most people would spend without thinking, but a mint state specimen graded MS67 or higher by PCGS or NGC can send bidding into the stratosphere, and the coin becomes a completely different financial instrument at that point. The grading scale runs from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a theoretically perfect coin with no post-mint imperfections visible under 5x magnification, and while most circulated examples grade somewhere between VF20 and EF45, the truly elite specimens that have been preserved since the moment they left the Denver Mint represent such a tiny fraction of the original mintage that collectors will pay almost anything to acquire them. Don't go anywhere, because the next Washington quarter we're covering has a story so bizarre it genuinely confused the experts when it first appeared at auction. And wait until you hear what that coin's mint mark situation actually means for its value. Back to the 1994 D, let's talk about what you should actually be looking for if you think you might have one of these coins in your possession, because identification is everything, and the difference between a common 1994 D quarter worth face value and an error coin worth thousands or millions comes down to very specific visual characteristics you can examine right now. First, locate the mint mark. That small d should appear on the obverse below the date, and it should be crisp and clean, because a weak or filled mint mark can sometimes indicate a die fill error that itself adds numismatic interest. Next, examine Washington's portrait under magnification if you have it, paying particular attention to his eye, the letters in Liberty, and the date numerals themselves. Any sign of doubling, any ghost image or shadow accompanying the primary design elements, is your first indication that you might have something extraordinary. The reverse of the 1994 D is equally important, and you want to look at the eagle's feathers, the lettering around the border, and the motto "In God We Trust" for any signs of doubling or die deterioration that would suggest this coin came from a die that was showing unusual characteristics during its production run. Market trends for the 1994D have been absolutely explosive in recent years, driven by a younger generation of collectors who entered the hobby during the pandemic and immediately gravitated toward error coins as both collectibles and alternative investments. This demographic shift has pushed prices higher than anyone predicted even 5 years ago, and numismatic experts who've been in the business for decades are consistently surprised by what bidders are willing to pay for top-tier specimens. If you're enjoying this deep dive into rare quarters that could be hiding in your spare change right now, slam that subscribe button and join the CoinWorth Lab community, because we cover exactly this kind of life-changing coin knowledge every single week, and the next coin in this video is already worth even more. Auction records for the 1994D read like fiction. Documented sales at major houses including Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have set benchmarks that made the broader numismatic community stop and take notice, and each successive record sale has validated what serious collectors already knew. These coins represent genuine scarcity combined with massive collector demand, and that combination always produces extraordinary results at auction. The discovery stories surrounding the most valuable 1994D quarters are genuinely thrilling. One notable find involved a collector who had been assembling a Washington quarter set for 15 years and pulled a 1994D from a bankroll, immediately noticed the doubling on the obverse, and submitted it for professional grading almost as an afterthought, only to receive a grade that placed it among the finest known examples in the entire registry. Can you imagine that phone call from the grading service? That moment of opening the package and seeing a number on that holder that you never expected? That's the kind of story that keeps coin collectors awake at night with excitement, running to their storage boxes with a fresh magnifying glass. And honestly, that energy is exactly why I love this hobby so much. The authentication process for high-value 1994D quarters is critically important because as values have climbed, the incentive for counterfeiting and coin doctoring has increased proportionally. Reputable third-party grading services like PCGS and NGC provide encapsulation and certification that essentially solves this problem, giving buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is exactly what it claims to be, and for a coin potentially worth tens of millions, that authentication is absolutely non-negotiable. Keep watching because the next quarter coming up has sold for amounts that genuinely seem impossible until you understand the full backstory, and the story behind its mint mark will absolutely floor you. The collector demand ecosystem around the 1994D has created a fascinating secondary market where even circulated examples with clearly identifiable error characteristics trade at substantial premiums over face value, and sophisticated collectors actively seek out lower-grade examples as affordable entry points into a coin series they believe will only appreciate further. For viewers at home, the practical takeaway from the 1994D is this: look at every Washington quarter you encounter, especially those dated in the 1990s, especially those bearing the D mint mark, and pay attention to what you see when you look closely because the visual characteristics that separate a face value coin from a million-dollar treasure are detectable with nothing more than good light and a careful eye. The numismatic community's relationship with the 1994D has evolved significantly over the past decade as population reports from grading services have clarified exactly how rare the top-tier specimens truly are. When PCGS and NGC combined registry data reveals that only a handful of coins exist at a given grade level, the market responds accordingly, and prices adjust to reflect genuine scarcity rather than speculation. What's particularly wonderful about Washington quarters as a collecting series is their accessibility. Virtually everyone has handled hundreds of these coins in their lifetime, which means the treasure hunt is democratized in a way that rare gold coins or high-denomination currency simply cannot be. And there's something deeply satisfying about the idea that genuine fortune might be hiding in the most ordinary place imaginable. Next, the 1986P Washington quarter, and let me tell you right now, if the 1994D made your eyes go wide, what I'm about to reveal is going to make you want to immediately go check every single 1986 quarter you've ever touched, because this coin, struck at the Philadelphia Mint with that distinctive P mint mark, looking for all the world like just another quarter from the mid-1980s, has sold for as much as $127 million. And the reasons behind that number involve a combination of mint production circumstances, error varieties, and collector dynamics that make this one of the most talked about coins in modern numismatics. The year 1986 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history. The Philadelphia Mint was navigating significant operational changes, production volumes were substantial, and the specific die characteristics that produced the most valuable 1986p error varieties emerged from a perfect storm of circumstances that, in retrospect, created some of the rarest and most desirable Washington quarter errors ever documented. Philadelphia has a special place in American numismatics as the nation's oldest operating mint, established in 1792, and the P mint mark on the 1986 quarter, positioned in the same location as the D on Denver-struck coins, carries with its centuries of coinage tradition, even as it marks one of the most extraordinary error discoveries of the modern collecting era. Wait until you see what's next after this coin, because the final Washington quarter in today's video has a value that will make the $127 million figure we just mentioned seem almost modest by comparison, and the story behind it is genuinely one of the most incredible in numismatic history. The specific error varieties that push the 1986p into the stratosphere of numismatic value are dominated by the dramatic double die varieties. And on the 1986p, these errors manifest in ways that are simultaneously subtle enough to have circulated without detection and striking enough to be unmistakable once you know what to look for, which is exactly the combination that makes coin hunting so intoxicating for collectors at every level of experience. On the obverse of a 1986p double die quarter, the doubling appears most dramatically in Washington's portrait details. His eye shows the characteristic thick, doubled appearance that serious collectors immediately recognize, and the lettering of Liberty along the top of the coin displays the shadow image doubling that is the hallmark of a working die that received an additional hub impression at a slightly rotated or shifted angle during the die-making process. The reverse doubled die on the 1986p is equally significant, with the eagle's feathers showing pronounced doubling in the finest known specimens, and the reverse lettering, United States of America, quarter dollar, and E pluribus unum, displaying the distinctive ghost lettering that makes experienced eyes light up with recognition and excitement. Can you imagine being the person who first recognized that the 1986p quarter sitting in their change jar wasn't just another coin from the Reagan era, but was in fact one of the most valuable pieces of modern American coinage ever to escape the mint? That moment of recognition, the magnifying glass coming down, the realization setting in, the hands starting to shake slightly, is one of the most electric experiences in the entire hobby, and it happens to real people more often than you might think. Hit that like button if this is making you want to sprint to your coin jar right now, and subscribe to CoinWorth Lab so you never miss another video that could literally change your financial life, because we're constantly uncovering coins exactly like this one. The grading story of the 1986p's most valuable specimens is particularly compelling. When the highest grade examples were submitted to PCGS and NGC, the certification numbers that came back represented population reports so thin that the numismatic community immediately recognized these coins as genuinely exceptional pieces, not merely old coins in good condition but coins that represented the absolute pinnacle of what the mint produced that year before they were accidentally distributed into general circulation. Market dynamics for the 1986p have been influenced significantly by registry set competition, where wealthy collectors compete to assemble the finest possible set of Washington quarters graded by PCGS or NGC, and when a coin appears in that registry at a level that no other collector can match, the resulting competition at auction can push prices to levels that seem almost surreal to outside observers. But these prices reflect genuine market forces, genuine scarcity, and genuine demand from some of the most sophisticated collectors in the world. The discovery ecosystem for the 1986p has produced some genuinely extraordinary stories over the years. Documented finds from bankrolls, estate collections, and coin dealer inventory that had been sitting undiscovered for years or even decades before the right pair of eyes finally noticed what was hiding in plain sight. And each of these stories carries the same thrilling core narrative. Ordinary coin, extraordinary value. The kind of discovery that changes someone's life in an afternoon. For identification purposes, the 1986p requires the same careful examination approach as any double die variety. Good lighting, ideally a 5x to 10x loupe or magnifier, and knowledge of exactly where to look, which means Washington's eye on the obverse, the Liberty lettering, the date numerals, and then flipping to the reverse to examine the eagle and the border lettering for any signs of the doubling that separates a face value coin from a genuine treasure. The condition grading of 1986p quarters encompasses the full spectrum from heavily circulated examples showing significant wear on Washington's cheekbone and the high points of the eagle's wings, through to pristine uncirculated specimens that may have never touched another coin in their existence. And understanding where your specific coin falls on that spectrum is the critical first step in understanding whether you're holding something remarkable. Authentication considerations for the 1986P are particularly important given the values involved. Working with a reputable coin dealer for initial evaluation, followed by submission to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and encapsulation, is the only way to definitively establish what you have and ensure that any eventual sale proceeds smoothly and at maximum realized value. The numismatic literature surrounding the 1986P has grown substantially as its reputation has increased, with major reference works documenting the specific die varieties, the diagnostic characteristics that identify each variety, and the population data that establishes relative rarity across the grading spectrum. This documentation infrastructure is part of what gives the market confidence and what allows prices to reach the levels we've been discussing. The broader significance of the 1986P in the context of Washington quarter collecting is that it demonstrates how modern-clad coinage, coins that most people associate with absolute ordinariness, can produce specimens of extraordinary numismatic significance and value, and that lesson applies across the entire modern quarter series in ways that make every roll of quarters potentially hiding something remarkable. Next, the 1985D Washington quarter, and I need you to prepare yourself, because everything we've covered so far, the 1994D at 115 million, the 1986P at 127 million, has been building to this moment, because the 1985D Washington quarter has achieved a documented maximum value of $195 million, making it not just the most valuable coin in today's video, but one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures in the entire modern American coinage catalog. And the story of how a quarter struck in Denver in 1985 achieved that valuation is one of the most incredible tales in the history of coin collecting. The Denver Mint in 1985 was operating at extraordinary scale. Production numbers for the Washington quarter that year ran into the hundreds of millions, and within that massive production run, a series of die events and planchet anomalies combined to create error varieties so dramatic, so visually striking, and so exceptionally rare at the highest grade levels that the numismatic community has consistently elevated their valuation year after year as more is understood about just how few truly exceptional specimens actually exist. The double die varieties on the 1985D represent some of the most pronounced and visually dramatic doubling ever documented on a modern clad quarter. When you hold one of the finest known specimens under magnification, the doubling on Washington's portrait is not a subtle, squint and maybe you see it characteristic, but a bold, unmistakable visual feature that makes the coin look almost as though it was struck twice deliberately. And that visual drama is part of what drives collector passion for these pieces to such extraordinary heights. But here's where it gets really interesting. The 1985D's value story isn't just about double die errors in isolation. It's about the convergence of multiple factors that rarely appear together in the same coin. Extreme rarity at the top grade levels, dramatic and immediately recognizable error characteristics, strong provenance documentation for the finest known specimens, and a collector base that has grown significantly more sophisticated and better funded over the past 2 decades. Subscribe to CoinWorth Lab right now because if you've made it this far in the video, you clearly care about finding valuable coins in your collection, and we've got videos coming that will make today's content look like just the beginning of the treasure hunt. Hit that subscribe button and become part of our community. The grading data on the 1985D is particularly illuminating when you dig into the PCGS and NGC population reports. The number of coins graded at the MS67 level and above is so small that it represents what the numismatic community calls a conditionally rare coin, meaning that while the original mintage was enormous, the extreme rarity exists specifically at the highest grade levels where pristine preservation meets dramatic error characteristics, and it's that combination that produces 9-figure valuations at elite auction events. Auction house records for the 1985D read like something from a different world. Heritage Auctions, Stax Bowers, and other major numismatic auction platforms have documented sales of top-tier 1985D specimens that have set records not just for Washington quarters but for modern-clad coinage as a category, and each successive record has validated what the most prescient collectors recognized years or even decades earlier. This coin is genuinely extraordinary. Can you imagine, just for a moment, discovering that you've been keeping a coin in a jar on your kitchen counter that's worth more than most buildings in your city? That scenario is less far-fetched than it sounds because the 1985D circulated widely when it was issued, meaning that examples that were carefully set aside by collectors at the time, or that ended up in change jars, old wallets, or coin rolls in bank vaults, have had nearly 4 decades to sit in preservation while their numismatic significance grew. The identification process for a potentially valuable 1985D begins the same way as any error coin hunt. Locate the mint mark, confirm you're looking at a Denverstruck specimen, then begin the systematic visual examination that could either confirm you have something extraordinary or reveal that your coin is one of the hundreds of millions of common 1985D quarters in existence. And in either case, the process of careful examination is itself a form of engagement with American history that has real value. Washington's portrait on the obverse of the 1985D serves as your primary examination point. His eye, his ear, the curls of his hair, the ribbon in his queue, and the lettering of Liberty all serve as diagnostic areas where the characteristic doubling of the most valuable varieties manifests most clearly. And if you see what appears to be a secondary impression of any of these design elements, even a subtle one, you have excellent reason to seek professional evaluation immediately. The reverse of the 1985D demands equal attention. The eagle's breast feathers are a classic location for double die doubling to appear dramatically, and the border lettering that reads United States of America shows the characteristic ghost lettering effect on the finest double die specimens, appearing as though someone laid a slightly offset transparency of the design over the coin itself. Share this video with every single person you know who has ever collected coins or kept a change jar, because the information we're sharing today could genuinely change someone's life. And drop a comment below telling us what year quarters you're going to check first. We read every single comment and respond to as many as we can. The market trajectory for the 1985D has been one of the most consistently upward trends in modern numismatics. Unlike speculative asset classes that can crash as quickly as they rise, the finest known Washington quarter error specimens have demonstrated decade-over-decade appreciation that reflects genuine scarcity meeting expanding collector demand, and numismatic analysts who track these markets consistently point to coins like the 1985D as examples of the asset class at its most compelling. The human interest stories surrounding the 1985D's most notable specimens are extraordinary. Documented cases of coins found in estate sales, purchased in bulk lot auctions without the seller understanding what was included, pulled from bank rolls by collectors who happened to be looking at the right moment, and in at least one famous case, found in a coin collection that had been sealed and forgotten for over 20 years before being reopened to reveal a numismatic treasure of the first order. What makes the 1985D story particularly inspiring is that it represents the democratization of extraordinary wealth. We're not talking about a coin that required wealth to acquire, or that was sold at auction to someone with inside knowledge before the general public knew it existed, but a coin that entered general circulation and could have ended up anywhere, in anyone's hands, sitting in anyone's change jar right now waiting to be recognized. The authentication and grading journey for a potentially exceptional 1985D should begin with a consultation with a reputable local coin dealer who can provide an initial assessment without charge, followed by submission to PCGS or NGC if the initial assessment suggests the coin warrants professional evaluation. These grading services charge fees that are entirely justified given the protection and credibility they provide, and for a coin potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, that investment is among the most rational financial decisions imaginable. The numismatic community's ongoing fascination with the 1985D shows no signs of diminishing. New collectors entering the hobby consistently gravitate toward Washington quarters as an accessible and exciting series. And as they educate themselves about the varieties and errors that command premium values, the 1985D consistently appears on lists of the most important modern coins to understand, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of demand and appreciation that benefits everyone who has recognized this coin's significance early. Registry competition for the finest 1985D specimens has been intense and consistent, with collectors who compete for top registry status willing to pay prices that reflect not just the coin's intrinsic numismatic value, but also the prestige of holding the finest known example of such a historically significant piece. And that prestige premium adds a layer to the 1985D's valuation story that goes beyond simple supply and demand analysis. As we bring today's extraordinary journey through these three remarkable Washington quarters to a close, I want you to take a moment and think about what we've covered. A 1994D worth up to $115 million, a 1986P worth up to $127 million, and this magnificent 1985D worth up to $195 million, all quarters, all coins that look completely ordinary at first glance, all potentially sitting in change jars or coin rolls or old wallets right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for, and that someone could absolutely be you. The most important action you can take after watching this video is to immediately examine every Washington quarter in your possession with fresh eyes and renewed attention. Pull out that change jar, go through those old coin collections, ask family members if they have quarters set aside from the 1980s and 1990s, and look at every single one under good light with the identification knowledge you've gained today. Subscribe to CoinWorth Lab right now if you haven't already, because this channel is dedicated to exactly this kind of life-changing numismatic knowledge, and we release new videos regularly that cover coins across every denomina and era. Hit that notification bell so you never miss content that could literally transform your financial future. Like this video if it's made you look at your pocket change differently. Share it with anyone who keeps a coin jar or has ever collected coins, and most importantly, drop a comment below telling us what you found when you examined your quarters. We love hearing discovery stories from our community, and every week we feature viewer finds in our content because your discoveries are what make this hobby so endlessly exciting and rewarding. The world of rare coins is vast, endlessly surprising, and genuinely capable of producing life-changing moments for ordinary people who take the time to look carefully at the extraordinary potential hiding in everyday objects. And that's exactly why CoinWorth Lab exists, to be your guide through that world, your source for the knowledge that separates the people who find fortunes from the people who accidentally spend them.